If he looks at you and is interested, then what happens is usually you just kind of start making out and feeling each other up. And that's what happened with this guy and I. And after a moment or two of kissing and making out, he pulled back from me and he goes, I have a private room. Like, let's go. And I'm like, well, I have a partner. This is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of BAMMER Talks. Today I'd like to talk to you about the phenomena of gay bathhouses and the etiquette that is associated with them. Bathhouses have been around for thousands of years. They were pretty popular in ancient Greek and Roman times when they were used, of course, for cleanliness, but quite popularly as well by men having sex with men in those places, and when it was pretty common. Over the course of time, I'm not sure exactly how they prospered. I think there were a lot of, Russian baths or places where, men were out in the frontier and they probably went for a steam bath and other things happened. But in terms of gay culture, you could look to the late 60s and early 70s when places like the Continental Baths in New York and the Everard Baths and others, the St. Mark's Baths, got their start, and they were extremely popular. The Continental was where Bette Midler and Barry Manilow, the singing duo, got their starts, in fact, and became prominent and very popular with gays. That was only until the mid-70s. Then 1981 AIDS arrived and everybody got extremely careful and worried about disease, understandably. The city of New York, for example, shut down all the baths. And in fact, in many places across the U.S., there were no baths for a long time. And even now, the bathhouse culture is not nearly as robust as it used to be. I don't think New York even has a gay bathhouse truly open and accepted gay bathhouse now. However, there are bathhouses around the U.S., Canada, Latin America, and Asia, and Europe that are quite popular. In fact, the culture in Europe is much more accepting, and they are more prevalent than they are here. Places like Berlin and Madrid and Paris and Amsterdam, it's pretty easy to find a gay bath, unlike some of the U.S. cities. When I came out in 1976, all my friends were going to the St. Mark's Baths in particular in the East Village, and I never once went with them. I was frankly petrified of the baths. Why? Because I now realize I'm demisexual. At the time, I had no idea of that limitation, but what it was if I didn't feel an emotional connection with someone, if I didn't have a chance to talk to him and get to know him a little bit and feel something, then I just didn't have the arousal, and therefore I couldn't have sex. And I was worried what would be expected of me in a place that's all about sex, when for me it wasn't all about sex. Sex was the outgrowth of, or the logical extension of, what I was feeling towards someone. So I never went. Later in the 90s and after that, I would be traveling, and I would be convinced finally to go with a friend or friends to a gay bathhouse. I did that in Rio. I did that in Sao Paulo. I did that in Bangkok. I did that with my partner at the time in Cape Town in 2004. I even did it in Fort Lauderdale with my best friends. And in not one of those locations did I end up having sex with anyone, except and until we went to the bathhouse in Cape Town, my partner and I, and we'd been talking about maybe opening our relationship a little bit. And I felt, well, you know what? We're 7,500 miles away from home. Nobody's going to know what happens here between us, because I hate gossip. I hate other people talking about me or sex. So let's try it. And if it doesn't work out, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So that's why we did. And he allowed me to select the person that the two of us would have sex with. And I saw this really hot, butch, crew-cutted, marine-like looking guy in the shower with us when we first arrived. And that's how bathhouses are. You enter an area where there's someone taking your money and giving you a key to a locker and maybe asking for an ID and maybe even doing a quick search for drugs and contraband, so that everything will be safe and there won't be any drug overdoses, for example. But when you arrive and you get your key, you go into a locker room, you change into your clothes, and then you put a towel around your naked self and you go into a shower area where you clean off, because the idea is others want to know that you're clean before you potentially have sex with them. And while we're in the shower, there's this guy standing next to us, and I noticed him. And later on, when my partner and I decided to do something, and he goes, "Will you pick?" And I'm like, "Well, what about that guy?" He goes, "Oh, God, yeah, he was hot." So I said, "Follow me." Now, this is where bathhouse etiquette comes in. I didn't really know what I was doing. As I said, I'd never done it before. But I had read and talked to friends about how it works. And so I put that into use in this moment when we're looking for that Marine guy. And we go into the steam room, and there he was, seated on the tile banquette across from where Jeff and I were. So I said to him, "Wait here." And I went over and I sat down next to him on the banquette. And what I'd been told or read was, if you're interested in someone, you have to take the chance and reach out physically. And so you put your hand on his knee, for example, or his thigh. And then he turns around and looks at you. And if he's not interested, the odds are he will take your hand off of his thigh and put it back on your own thigh, or in a little bit less overt rejection, perhaps, just stand up and walk away, or just say, "Thanks, but I'm a little tired," or whatever. And you'll get a no. If he looks at you and is interested, then what happens is usually you just kind of start making out and feeling each other up. And that's what happened with this guy and I. And after a moment or two of kissing and making out, he pulled back from me and he goes, "I have a private room. Like, let's go." And I'm like, "Well, I have a partner." And I pointed over to Jeff, who was a big, muscular guy. And honestly, most people didn't say no if that opportunity came along, and as this guy didn't. So the three of us go into his private room. We proceeded to have sex in various permutations. I was kind of the organizer of the party. I wanted to make sure that my husband was taken care of. I got taken care of too, but that was secondary. And when it was all over and said and done, and Jeff and I were alone, I said, "So what'd you think? You wanted to open it up. Was that gratifying?" And he said, "Honestly, it really wasn't." "Why? What was wrong? He was handsome and masculine and whatever." And he goes, "Yeah, but I was worried about you. You hadn't been interested in doing this, and I thought maybe you were really just making a sacrifice." I'm like, "No. Once I said I was in, I was in." So in any event, that's what happened for me. The first time I had sex in a bathhouse, the second time was a year later in Sao Paulo, where we did the same thing. I'm sorry, in Rio. And we may have done it a third time somewhere. And that's it. I've been to other bathhouses and never had sex again, because that's not my chief joy. My chief joy is meeting someone, and sex might be an outgrowth of that interaction and the emotions that go on between us. The bathhouses mostly shut down during AIDS. They then began to open up again slightly in the 90s and since then in the U.S. But for example, New York City has always remained strict about standards and approval, so I don't believe there's an actual open gay bathhouse in New York right now. There is a chain called Steamworks that operates in Toronto and Chicago and Vancouver and Seattle, and it's quite popular. Large places, clean, a lot of attractive clientele. There are plenty of places, as I mentioned, around the world, but especially in Europe. They're much more open, and they have almost like nightclubs and places to have drinks and sit down and chat, besides having sex in Brazil and Argentina and other South American cities. So if you're looking to meet someone, and the problem is, for those who really just want a sexual release, it's really hard these days. All you've got are the apps, and there's a lot of, dialing for dollars, if you will, talking to dozens of people, hoping to find somebody interested that you're interested in, and it often just doesn't happen. It doesn't even give you a chance to get to know the person, how he sounds, how he moves, whatever. You're just looking at static photos and a few key words. The bars used to be much better about allowing people to get a sense of and a feeling for a potential partner. But they're not as popular anymore, and they tend to be where people who already know each other go, not to pick others up. So if you're looking for a place to find sex as an outlet, and again, that's not something that motivates me in particular, but I can understand it does for a lot of people, then you need to go to a gay bathhouse and check with your friends or the local gay kind of resources in whatever city or area you're in, and you'll probably be able to find one nearby. This has been Mike Balaban's. Balaban is BAMMER 47 Tales, and I am just trying to kind of impart to you a sense of what our history has been like and how our culture has developed and changed. Thanks for listening in. Appreciate it. See you next time.